Dakota Reeves had been at Millfield Regional High School for exactly 47 days when Cassidy Brennan first shoved her into a locker. Dakota was 5'6", with auburn hair that caught the fluorescent lights wrong, making it look almost orange under certain angles. She wore thrift store jeans and her father's old Marine Corps t-shirts, which hung loose on her narrow frame. What Cassidy and her friends couldn't see was the rope-burn scars on Dakota's knuckles from years of climbing training ropes in her father's garage gym, or the calluses on her palms from heavy bag work. Dakota's family had moved to Millfield after her father's medical discharge from the Marines. Staff Sergeant Marcus Reeves now worked third shift at the lumber mill and slept during most daylight hours. Dakota's mother had died in a car accident when Dakota was 12, leaving father and daughter to navigate the world as a tight unit of two. Marcus had taught Dakota to fight, not because he expected her to use it, but because he couldn't always be there to protect her. "Stay invisible until you graduate," he'd told her on the first day at Millfield. "Pick your battles." But Dakota's battles seemed to pick her. Cassidy Brennan ruled the junior class through a combination of inherited wealth, practiced cruelty, and two loyal followers, Megan Torres and Ashley Chen. Cassidy's father owned 3 car dealerships across the county, which meant Cassidy drove a different vehicle to school each week and never worried about consequences. Her blonde hair was professionally highlighted every 6 weeks, and her wardrobe cost more than Dakota's father made in a month. The targeting started small. Cassidy would bump into Dakota in the computer lab, causing her to lose unsaved work. She'd whisper comments about Dakota's clothes during AP literature discussions. She'd organize group projects specifically to exclude Dakota, then complain to Mrs. Henderson about Dakota's lack of participation. "She smells like motor oil," Dakota overheard Cassidy telling Megan near the library's quiet study area on a Tuesday in October. Probably because her dad's some kind of grease monkey. Dakota's father wasn't a grease monkey. He'd been a hand-to-hand combat instructor for Marines before an IED in Afghanistan destroyed most of the hearing in his left ear and left him with chronic migraines. But Dakota didn't correct them. Marcus had taught her that sometimes the best response was no response. The harassment escalated in November. Cassidy discovered Dakota's social media accounts and began leaving comments on every photo. "Who let the rescue dog out?" appeared under a picture of Dakota at her cousin's wedding. "Salvation Army called, they want their outfit back," showed up beneath a selfie Dakota had posted after making honor roll. Dakota deleted the comments and made her accounts private, but screenshots circulated through group chats. Students she'd never spoken to began giggling when she walked past. Someone created a fake Instagram account called Millfield Charity Case that posted daily updates about Dakota's outfits, complete with price estimates from thrift stores. The school's anti-bullying policy required documentation of 3 separate incidents before administration could take action. Dakota reported the social media harassment to her guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, who promised to look into it, but explained that off-campus cyberbullying fell into a gray area unless direct threats were made. "Have they threatened you physically?" Mrs. Patterson asked during their meeting in mid-November. "Not exactly," Dakota admitted. "Then we'll monitor the situation and see if it escalates." It escalated. The day before Thanksgiving break, Dakota was leaving the auditorium after drama club practice when she found Cassidy, Megan, and Ashley waiting in the stairwell. The auditorium stairs were old concrete, built in the 1960s when safety railings were more suggestion than requirement. Students typically used the main hallway stairs, but drama club members often cut through the auditorium to reach the parking lot. Well, Cassidy said, blocking Dakota's path, "if it isn't our little charity case." Dakota tried to step around them, but Megan moved to block her. The stairwell was narrow, with barely enough room for 2 people to pass comfortably. "We need to talk," Ashley said, though her voice lacked Cassidy's confident malice. Ashley had always been the reluctant participant in their campaigns. "I'm trying to leave," Dakota said. She kept her voice steady, remembering her father's advice about not showing fear. "You're trying to ruin my reputation," Cassidy shot back, "telling lies to Mrs. Patterson about harassment. I never mentioned your name. Don't play stupid. You think we don't know what you're doing, trying to get us in trouble because you can't handle a little teasing." Dakota felt her phone buzz in her pocket. Probably her father, texting that he was leaving work early to pick her up. If she could stall for 10 minutes, he'd be here. "Look," Dakota said, "I don't want any trouble. Can we just pretend we never saw each other?" "Too late for that," Cassidy said. She stepped closer, forcing Dakota back toward the stairs. "You already made this our problem." "Cassidy, maybe we should—" Ashley started. "Shut up," Megan interrupted. "She needs to learn." Dakota felt the edge of the top step behind her heel. The stairwell dropped 17 steps to the basement level, where it connected to the drama department's storage rooms. During the day, the area bustled with activity, but after school it was empty except for the occasional janitor. "Learn what?" Dakota asked. "That actions have consequences," Cassidy said. "You want to cry to counselors about bullying? Let me show you what real bullying looks like." Cassidy shoved Dakota hard in the chest with both hands. Dakota had been trained for this. Her father had spent countless hours teaching her how to fall, how to roll, how to absorb impact. But training scenarios didn't account for concrete stairs at awkward angles, or the way a backpack full of textbooks could shift your center of gravity at exactly the wrong moment. Dakota's left foot slipped off the step. She twisted, trying to catch herself on the railing, but the old metal rail was loose and gave way under her grip. She tumbled backward, her right shoulder hitting the third step, her head bouncing off the fifth. Her left arm caught under her body weight on the seventh step with a sound like a branch snapping. She came to rest at the bottom of the stairwell, textbooks scattered around her like fallen leaves. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds. "Oh, shit," Megan whispered. "Dakota," Ashley called down. "Dakota, are you okay?" Dakota tried to respond, but when she opened her mouth, only a wheeze came out. Her left arm was bent at an angle that arms weren't supposed to bend. Her right ankle throbbed with each heartbeat. Something warm trickled down the back of her neck. "We need to get help," Ashley said. "No," Cassidy snapped. "We need to leave, now." "She's really hurt. She fell down the stairs. Accidents happen." "Cassidy, her arm is not our problem. She slipped. We weren't even here." Dakota heard footsteps retreating up the stairs. She tried to move, but the movement sent lightning bolts of pain through her left side. Her vision kept blurring. She fumbled for her phone with her right hand, but it had skittered under a pile of papers during the fall. Dakota lay on the cold concrete for 22 minutes before Mr. Jameson, the night janitor, found her. The ambulance ride was a blur of sirens and questions Dakota couldn't answer coherently. Her father met them at Millfield General Hospital, still wearing his work uniform and smelling like sawdust and machine oil. When he saw Dakota on the gurney, his face went through several expressions before settling into the controlled calm he'd perfected during 2 tours in Afghanistan. The damage assessment took 4 hours. Compound fracture of the left radius, dislocated shoulder, grade 2 concussion, severe bruising along her ribs and back, and a hairline crack in her right ankle. The doctors said she was lucky the head injury wasn't worse. "How did this happen?" Marcus asked during the quiet moments between nurses checking vitals. Dakota told him about the stairs, about slipping, about the railing giving way. She didn't mention Cassidy or the shoving, not yet. "The school called," Marcus said. "They're reviewing safety protocols for the stairwells. Apparently that railing's been loose for months." Dakota spent 5 days in the hospital and came home the day after Thanksgiving with her left arm in a cast from wrist to shoulder, a walking boot on her right foot, and strict instructions to avoid physical activity for at least 8 weeks. The concussion left her with headaches that made reading difficult, which meant she'd have to rely on audiobooks and note-taking assistants to keep up with her classes. Marcus took family leave from the lumber mill to care for her, which meant their already tight finances got tighter. The hospital bills would take years to pay off, even with his military insurance covering most of the costs. "We'll figure it out," he assured Dakota when she apologized for the expense. That's what family does. During her recovery, Dakota had plenty of time to think. She replayed the moment at the top of the stairs over and over, analyzing Cassidy's words, Megan's positioning, Ashley's reluctance. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Not just angry about the shove, but angry about everything. The months of harassment, the social media campaigns, the way Cassidy had calculated every move to stay just inside the boundaries of what the school considered actionable. The way she'd walked away while Dakota lay broken at the bottom of the stairs. Most of all, Dakota was angry about her father working extra shifts to pay medical bills for injuries that weren't his daughter's fault. On her third week of recovery, Dakota asked Marcus to teach her to fight left-handed. "Your arm's still healing," he pointed out. "My right arm works fine." "Dakota, I know you're frustrated. I'm not frustrated, I'm ready." Marcus studied his daughter's face for a long moment. He'd seen that expression before, in the mirror, after particularly bad days in Afghanistan. It was the look of someone who'd decided that being a victim was no longer acceptable. "Okay," he said finally, "but we do this right. No shortcuts, no rushing. And you don't use any of this unless you absolutely have to." "Understood." "I mean it, Dakota. Violence is a last resort, not a first option." "I know." They started with footwork, since Dakota could practice movement patterns without putting stress on her healing bones. Marcus had converted their garage into a basic gym years ago, with heavy bags, speed bags, and wrestling mats covering the concrete floor. During Dakota's recovery, it became their classroom. "Fighting isn't about being tough," Marcus explained during their first lesson. "It's about being smart. You study your opponent, you identify weaknesses, you create opportunities." Dakota learned to throw straight punches with her right hand while keeping her left arm protected. She practiced kicks with her good leg while maintaining balance despite the walking boot. Most importantly, she learned to think tactically. 3 opponents is a problem, Marcus told her. But 3 opponents who aren't expecting resistance, that's an advantage. By Christmas break, Dakota's cast had been replaced with a removable brace, and the walking boot was gone. The concussion symptoms had mostly faded. Physically, she was healing well. Mentally, she was planning. The school's investigation into her accident had concluded that the loose railing was an infrastructure failure, not a safety protocol issue. The railing was repaired, warning signs were posted about reporting maintenance issues, and life at Millfield Regional returned to normal. Except Dakota's normal had changed. She returned to school in January with her arm still in a brace, but otherwise appearing recovered. Cassidy and her friends had expected Dakota to transfer schools, or at least keep her head down. Instead, Dakota seemed almost confident, making eye contact in hallways and speaking up during class discussions. "Look who's back," Cassidy said on Dakota's first day back, cornering her near the computer lab. "How's the arm?" "Getting stronger every day," Dakota replied. Something in her tone made Cassidy step back slightly. "Good. Maybe next time you'll watch where you're going." "Oh, I'll definitely be more careful about who's behind me on stairs." Cassidy's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just general safety advice." For 3 weeks, Dakota played the part of a recovering victim. She attended physical therapy appointments, used her injury as an excuse to avoid gym class, and seemed to pose no threat to anyone. But she was watching, learning patterns, identifying opportunities. Cassidy's routine was predictable. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she stayed after school for student council meetings in the conference room near the main office. The meetings typically ran until 4:30, after which Cassidy would stop by her locker, then cut through the computer lab to reach the parking lot where Megan would be waiting in her car. Ashley had been acting differently since Dakota's fall. She avoided eye contact in hallways and seemed uncomfortable during Cassidy's usual harassment campaigns. Dakota suspected Ashley was struggling with guilt, which meant she might not be fully committed to helping Cassidy if trouble started. On the last Thursday in January, Dakota put her plan into motion. She waited in the computer lab until 4:25, positioned at a workstation near the back exit. At exactly 4:31, Cassidy walked through the lab's main entrance, talking loudly into her phone about weekend plans. She was alone. Ashley had apparently skipped the meeting, and Megan was waiting outside. "I know, right?" Cassidy was saying. "She thinks she's so smart now, but she's still the same pathetic." She stopped talking when she noticed Dakota at the computer. "I'll call you back," Cassidy said, ending the phone call. "What are you doing here?" "Using the computer," Dakota said without looking up from the screen. "It's a computer lab. This lab closes at 4:30. Door was unlocked." Cassidy approached Dakota's workstation. "You're not supposed to be here. Neither are you. I'm on student council. I have permission to be in the building after hours." Dakota finally looked up from the computer screen. "Do you have permission to push people downstairs?" The question hung in the air between them. Cassidy's expression went through several changes before settling on practiced innocence. "I don't know what you're talking about," Cassidy said. "Sure you do." Dakota stood up slowly, favoring her left arm just enough to appear vulnerable. "You, Megan, and Ashley, the auditorium stairs, right before Thanksgiving break. You fell. The railing was broken. After you shoved me." "Prove it," Dakota smiled. It wasn't a particularly nice smile. "I don't have to prove it. I just have to return the favor." Cassidy took a step backward. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm stating an intention." "You can't touch me. My father will have you arrested." "For what?" "Having an accident." Cassidy reached for her phone, but Dakota was faster. She grabbed Cassidy's wrist with her right hand, her strong hand, and applied just enough pressure to make Cassidy drop the phone. "Let go of me," Cassidy demanded. "Like you let go of me on the stairs?" Dakota released Cassidy's wrist and took a step back. Cassidy immediately bent to retrieve her phone, which was exactly what Dakota had hoped she'd do. The moment Cassidy straightened up, Dakota hit her. It wasn't a wild swing or an emotional outburst. It was a textbook straight right cross, thrown with proper form and precise targeting. Dakota's fist connected with the left side of Cassidy's jaw, snapping her head to the right and dropping her to one knee. Cassidy stared up at Dakota in shock, one hand pressed to her face. "You psycho bitch! You broke my jaw!" "It's not broken," Dakota said calmly. "If it was broken, you wouldn't be talking." Cassidy tried to stand, but Dakota shoved her back down, not gently, but not with the same calculated violence she'd just demonstrated. "Here's what's going to happen," Dakota said. "You're going to stop. All of it. The comments, the social media, the whisper campaigns. You're going to tell your friends to stop. And if I even suspect you're planning retaliation, I'm going to explain to everyone exactly how I ended up at the bottom of those stairs. Nobody will believe you. Maybe not, but they'll definitely believe the security footage." Cassidy's eyes widened. "What security footage?" "The camera in the auditorium hallway. It doesn't cover the stairwell directly, but it shows the three of you following me toward the stairs, and it shows you running away afterward instead of getting help." This was a bluff. Dakota had checked, and the auditorium camera had been broken for months. But Cassidy didn't know that. "You're lying," Cassidy said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Am I? Want to find out what happens when I show that footage to the police?" "Because pushing someone downstairs isn't bullying, Cassidy. It's assault, aggravated assault, since I was seriously injured." Dakota knelt down next to Cassidy, keeping her voice low and calm. "My medical bills are almost $30,000. My father had to take unpaid leave to care for me. We might lose our house because of what you did. So believe me when I tell you that ending your social life is the least I'm willing to do for revenge. I could have you expelled for hitting me. Go ahead, explain to Principal Morrison why you were alone in a computer lab with the girl you've been harassing for months. Explain why you didn't report the attack immediately. Explain why you're not calling the police right now. Cassidy opened and closed her mouth several times without speaking. Here's the thing about bullies, Dakota continued. You're only dangerous when people think you're untouchable. But everybody saw me break my arm falling downstairs, and everybody's going to see you walking around with a bruised face. They're going to do the math. Dakota stood up and shouldered her backpack. This ends now, Cassidy. All of it. Or next time, I won't stop at one punch. She walked toward the computer lab's exit, then paused at the door. Oh, and Cassidy, if anything happens to Ashley because she's feeling guilty about what you did, I'll hold you personally responsible for that too. Dakota left Cassidy sitting on the floor of the computer lab, one hand pressed to her swelling jaw, staring at her phone and trying to decide whether to call for help. The next day, Cassidy appeared at school with a bruise along her jawline that she claimed came from walking into a door. When classmates asked about it, she changed the subject quickly. She avoided eye contact with Dakota in hallways and didn't speak during the classes they shared. More importantly, the harassment stopped. No more social media comments, no more whispered insults. No more organized exclusion from group projects. Megan and Ashley seemed confused by Cassidy's sudden disinterest in tormenting Dakota, but they didn't push for explanations. Ashley actually approached Dakota a week later, stopping by her locker between classes. I wanted to apologize, Ashley said quietly, about what happened before break, on the stairs. I know you didn't want to be there, Dakota replied. That doesn't make it okay. No, it doesn't, but it makes it forgivable. Ashley nodded and started to walk away, then turned back. Cassidy's been acting weird lately, like she's scared of something. Maybe she finally realized that actions have consequences. Word spread quickly through Millfield Regional's social ecosystem that something had shifted in the Dakota-Cassidy dynamic. Students who had previously avoided Dakota out of fear of Cassidy's retaliation began including her in conversations and group activities. Dakota's grades improved as she was no longer spending mental energy on harassment avoidance strategies. Most importantly, Dakota's father was able to return to his regular work schedule, which helped stabilize their finances. 3 weeks after the computer lab incident, Dakota was approached by Mrs. Patterson, her guidance counselor. I wanted to check in, Mrs. Patterson said during a scheduled meeting. How are you adjusting since returning from your injury? Much better, Dakota said. No more problems with harassment. That's wonderful to hear. Any idea what changed? Dakota considered her answer carefully. I think some people realized that picking on someone with a broken arm wasn't a good look. Well, whatever the reason, I'm glad things have improved. You seem more confident lately. I learned a lot during my recovery about standing up for myself. Good for you. Self-advocacy is an important skill. If Mrs. Patterson suspected there was more to the story, she didn't press for details. The anti-bullying policy required documentation of incidents, not explanations for why they stopped happening. Spring semester passed without major incident. Cassidy found new ways to occupy her time that didn't involve targeting other students. Megan and Ashley drifted into different social circles. Dakota joined the debate team and discovered she enjoyed competitive argumentation when it was contained within established rules and boundaries. Her arm healed completely by April, though she continued training with her father in their garage gym. Not because she expected to need those skills again, but because she'd learned something important about the relationship between physical capability and mental confidence. Violence should always be a last resort, Marcus reminded her during one of their training sessions. But knowing you can defend yourself changes how you walk through the world. I know, Dakota said, throwing combinations at the heavy bag with both hands now fully functional. I also know that bullies don't usually expect their victims to hit back. True, but once you cross that line, there's no going back. People will always know you're capable of violence. Good. Marcus studied his daughter's face as she continued working the bag. She'd grown up considerably in the months since the stairwell incident. The quiet, withdrawn girl who'd tried to stay invisible had been replaced by someone who understood her own power and wasn't afraid to use it when necessary. Just remember, he said finally, the strongest people are the ones who don't have to prove their strength. I'll remember, Dakota promised, but I'll also remember that sometimes strength is the only language bullies understand. The school year ended without further confrontation. Cassidy graduated and went to college out of state. Megan and Ashley apologized to Dakota during senior year, genuine apologies that acknowledged the harm they'd caused and their role in enabling Cassidy's behavior. Dakota graduated with honors and earned a partial scholarship to study criminal justice at the state university. She planned to become a victim's advocate, helping other people navigate systems that weren't always designed to protect the vulnerable. But she kept training in her father's garage because some lessons were too important to forget. Years later, when Dakota thought about the girl who'd been shoved down the auditorium stairs, she felt a mix of sympathy and pride. Sympathy for what that girl had endured, and pride for how she'd chosen to respond. The broken bones had healed, but the broken trust in institutional protection had led to something more valuable. The knowledge that sometimes justice required taking matters into your own hands. Dakota never regretted hitting Cassidy in the computer lab. It had been calculated, proportional, and effective. More importantly, it had ended the harassment without escalating into something worse. Sometimes the best way to stop a bully was to make them understand that their victim was no longer afraid of them. And sometimes that understanding required demonstrating that fear could flow in both directions. The weight of gravity had pulled Dakota down those stairs and taught her about helplessness. But gravity also powered the punch that taught Cassidy about consequences. In both cases, what went up eventually came down. The difference was learning to control the direction of the fall.